Welcome to the Birth Launch Podcast, an empowering space for expecting and new parents to hear candid conversations with experts and learn how to craft your ideal birth. We will tackle the scary and weird questions that come up along the way and provide answers that are driven by science and evidence-based recommendations. I'm going to show you how to redefine parenthood and choose what's best aligned for you and your goals. With 10 years of experience in family education and a master's degree in human development and family studies, I'm ready to help you navigate pregnancy and explore your birth options to free yourself of fear surrounding childbirth. My goal is to help you have an informed and confident labor experience, plus an empowered and joyous postpartum. Heather, welcome to the show.
Hi everybody. Great to be here. My name is Heather Medlin. I am the creator and founder of Ready from Birth. I teach infant potty training or elimination communication over on Instagram at readyfrombirth.et. And I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I'm excited to talk about elimination communication. I think for a lot of parents, that's probably a foreign term. However, I know it from my days in early childhood. So, listeners, if you're unfamiliar, I did not start my career in doulahood like right out of college. I was in the early childhood education sector for a number of years, working with kids birth to 5, and primarily my bread and butter was that birth to 3. It just is like where I thrived, and elimination communication was always a topic. We had some parents choose to do it. It was something that we supported in the school and the facility that I worked at. It was something I educated parents on to see if it was an option that they wanted to do, and that's all I know about elimination communication. So let's start there. For the people who've never heard of this, what is elimination communication?
Okay, so elimination communication is exactly what the words say. So elimination is the baby's need to pee or poop, and then communication is them letting you know that they need to pee or poop. And a lot of people don't realize that babies are even able to recognize that feeling in their body, much less let you know about it. The truth is they're actually born to do this, and it's one of their 5, what I call the basic needs of a baby, that they are able to recognize and communicate to you from birth. And those needs are like hunger, sleepiness, physical comfort, closeness or security to you, like feeling of safety, and elimination. And most parents do not know that is a need of a baby and something that they are asking you to help them with, and that they are letting you know and they can recognize it.
So you're basically talking about infant potty training is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
potty
starts at
training
birth.
from birth.
Yeah. And
Nice.
so I think a lot of people assume that children are not even ready to begin potty training until they're 2, maybe 3 years old. And I've actually done a lot of research into why this is, because I'm so curious about it, given that I do elimination communication with my baby. I have naturally potty trained her from 5 weeks old, as well as my son, my oldest. We traditionally or conventionally potty trained him starting when he was 25 months old. We actually started potty training them both on the same day. I do not recommend that. It doesn't have to be that hard for you, but it actually was easier to start with her than it was with him. Like, she was getting like every single poop in the potty, and we were struggling with him for over 6 weeks. So yeah, it's actually much easier to start with them at first, because it is something that they are naturally physiologically primed to do. It's an instinct they're born with. It's actually a survival mechanism that humans and all mammals have. So if you think about it, of course you would not want your baby to soil you or the bedding or themselves. It's a hygiene thing. It's for their safety and their survival. And so literally every kind of mammal on this planet knows how to teach their young, to let them know that they need to do some business. They're going to take them to an appropriate place where they want them to do their business and help them out with that. And so I think what a lot of people don't realize is that we are teaching our children what we want them to do from day one. And so if we teach them that we want them to pee and poop in a diaper, they're going to do that. They're going to learn how to do that. And then when they're older, 2 or 3, and they're a toddler and they're at the height of their control independent phase, and then we're trying to tell them, no, I don't want you to do that anymore. Now I want you to pee and poop in the potty. They're like, what? But that's not what you told me for 2+ years that you wanted me to do. And so babies are, because they have this natural instinct to communicate their need to go, we can respond to that. We can listen for those cues and respond to that by offering the potty and giving them a chance to do their business in a clean and hygienic way that feels good to them. And they will learn that's what they're supposed to do. So we are setting the tone from day one, what we want them to do, and they're going to pick up on that and learn that and continue to do that. So with a baby, it's technically elimination communication because obviously they are very small and helpless and they cannot physically take themselves to the potty. We are the ones that have to take on that responsibility to listen for them and their cues and respond. But potty training, the reason I call it natural infant potty training and we say we're beginning from birth is because they are learning about using the potty, about what it feels like in their body to recognize those urges, what it feels like to relax those muscles and take care of business, and they are actually even able to hold it for a short amount of time as a baby, contrary to popular belief. I've had so many comments on my Instagram by people just insisting that a baby just can't. They just can't do it. They have no idea how to do that. How could they possibly hold it? And I'm like, have you tried it? Why do you believe that? Like, where is that belief coming from? And I think so many of us are conditioned to believe this narrative that children are not ready until they're much, much older. And the pediatricians in this country, in the US, where we're speaking from, as well as the diaper companies and Pampers, if you Google, when is my child ready to start potty training? Like the first 3 or 4 sites that pop up are Pampers, Huggies, Honest, and they're all, if you read who is the author of these articles, it's either a marketing executive or a pediatrician who was hired by these companies to tell you your child is not ready. Do not pressure them into starting too early. It's going to take longer if you start too early. Friends, please, if you take one thing away from this podcast today, it is that the people who benefit from your child being in diapers longer, so instead of finishing at 12 to 18 months, which is possible when you begin elimination communication from birth, versus the average age of complete toilet independence now, which is 35 to 37 months. That is 2 to 3 times as long in diapers as a child who has begun with EC. Who benefits from your child being in diapers 2 to 3 years longer than they otherwise would? It's not you. It's not your child.
You.
It is the companies that are providing the product that you are buying. And they have created a need by telling you that your child is not ready. They can't recognize their need. They don't know how to do this. They can't hold it. Don't pressure them. Wait. Of course they want you to wait. It benefits them. If everybody in this country who's having a baby in 2024, and it's about 3.7 million babies born per year in the US, if every one of those moms woke up tomorrow and realized that EC is possible, think about how many billions of dollars that would cut out of this market industry overnight. It's massive. And we and our babies are not the ones who are benefiting from the availability of disposable diapers. So I want you to think about that. It's really about money and not about serving your baby or doing what's in the best interest for your baby. I'm going to take a breath after that.
Yeah. We all need a breath after that. Everybody take a deep breath in and deep breath out. Think about too how many diapers we could keep out of landfills, right? How much better our earth would be able to benefit from people being in diapers a lesser amount of time. Okay, so you keep talking about our babies can recognize this and they can communicate this. And you guys, I want to recognize that This definitely sounds crazy if you've never heard of it before. But since I have seen this work with my own eyes, I'm here to tell you your baby is capable of these things. It is the wildest thing. And I bucked it too when I first found out. And I was a teacher at that time. And so I was in a different position. I wasn't a parent, and my responsibility was different. And the mindset in which I was taking care of these children were different than a parent. And I want to recognize that this is the first time you're hearing about elimination communication. You're like, all right, these 2 women are wackos, but I'm with Heather on it. Don't knock it until you try it. It may not be for you. Certainly, it takes dedication and it does take a commitment, but it does work. So, Heather, what do these signs look like to indicate that your baby is needing or is feeling that urge to go pee or go poop? Or is there anything that we need to do to facilitate that? Are we just learning our baby and watching their cues? What does that actually look like in early infancy?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that's one I get all the time. So I just want to say every baby is a little bit different. And so your baby's cues are and what my baby's cues are may not be the same. And also your baby is going to change their signal over time. So if you start from birth or start in the newborn period and carry this out through full toilet independence, which is anytime shortly after they begin walking, so as early as 9 months or as late as 18 months, then they're probably going to have a vast array of signals throughout that time. In my free guide, which I have a guide to natural infant potty training that you can download, we'll link it in the show notes. But in my guide, I talk about 2 key things to look for to know when it's time to offer the potty. So one is, I call it watch for the shift. So you want to watch for the shift in your baby's energy, either from a state of kind of low, calm, chill energy to agitation or irritability, or from a state of play and noise and active to suddenly becoming very still or retreating even into another room if they are mobile and are crawling. So you want to watch for that shift because that's really your indicator that, oh, like they're starting to feel that urge and something has changed and now they either need to pee or they need to poop. I've found that a pee signal is generally more agitated, like they may start to, if it's a newborn, they may start to cry softly or fidget or arch their back away from you. And then for pooping, as they are generally going to either get very still, you may see their facial expression change. If they are breastfeeding, then most babies will not, they generally will not continue to latch and poop or pee at the same time. So if you're trying to latch your baby and they want latch, they're doing kind of the thing where they're just like, their head is going everywhere. You know what I'm talking about if you're breastfeeding. But if they won't latch, that is a very strong signal that they need to do some business. Or if they're latching really well and it's going great, and then they start popping off and you can't get them to relatch, it's probably because the milk has stimulated their digestion and now they're ready to poop. A newborn baby, yes, what goes in will come out. And a newborn baby typically will breastfeed, they say 8 to 12 times a day. You may be more like 6 to 10 times a day, whatever your baby is doing. You can generally count on as many poops per day as feeds per day with a newborn baby. And as they get older and they mature, their pees and poops will start to consolidate and they may not poop every time they feed. My daughter is 15 months now and she typically will poop maybe 2 times a day now. But they will poop a lot more frequently in the beginning, almost every time they eat. And so you can pretty much count on if you're breastfeeding and you're still using diapers, you're going to get a poop diaper by the end of that feed or shortly thereafter. So that is a great time to offer the potty. I have actually the video on my YouTube channel, which is Ready from Birth. I do have a video about how to get started with a newborn. And in that video, I actually show you how to use a top hat potty or a lap potty. It literally looks like an upside down top hat, and you sit it in your lap and you can just breastfeed your baby over the top hat with naked bum, no diaper. So you just nest them down in there and then they can pee and poop freely while you are feeding them. So that's actually a really great way to introduce EC, like super easy, super low stakes in the beginning, and let them do their business in a way that is naturally timed with what they normally would do anyway. And it takes a little bit of the pressure off of you to notice their signals and offer. And then the other thing that I talk about in my guide is offering on the ins and outs. Every time they're going into a baby holder, we'll call it of some kind. So if they're going into their crib, a car seat, a stroller, a baby carrier, a high chair, anything like that is going to contain them. And then again, offering on the way out of all of those things I just mentioned. So right after a nap, right after a feed, right after sitting in the high chair, and sometimes during the time sitting in the high chair, you will notice, and then it's time to take them. They typically will wait, especially if you are wearing them. Most babies will not pee or poop on you, especially if they are very young and you begin EC with them early. That instinct not to soil themselves, their caregiver, or their bedding is very strong. And so a baby typically will not pee while they're on you. So if you're wearing them in a carrier or a wrap or a ring sling, as soon as you take them out, offer the potty, 9 times out of 10, they're going to pee right away because they have been holding it while they're in there. And if you've ever been holding your baby or carrying your baby and you notice that they start to get really agitated and they're like shifting around and trying to make room or arching their back away, that is a really strong signal that they need to pee. And you are holding them. And so it's actually quite uncomfortable for them. They feel like, oh, I don't want to pee on them. I don't want to do this. And so they will start to get very physically agitated. So a great way for you to be able to recognize these signals, these shifts in energy, is to keep your baby close. And when you are close to your baby, so that looks like breastfeeding them, holding them, co-sleeping with them, wearing them, or just sitting on the floor playing next to them. Being in physical proximity of your baby, you are going to be much more attuned to their energy and their need to pee or their irritability if that's starting to come up than if you're like making dinner in the kitchen and they're playing in the living room. If you can't see them or hear them or keep a direct line of sight on them, or even better, if you're physically touching them, it's going to be very hard for you to recognize their signals. And so the way that kind of plays into the disposable diaper culture that we have now is that diapers have made it really easy for us to just set it and forget it with our baby, right? Like we can put the diaper on, set them over there, they can play, we can go about our business. So diapers are a really great tool that we have. And in fact, I think you could probably credit diapers for making it much more possible for women to enter the workforce. And that's a whole other conversation that we could have. But I do think there is benefit that we have these as a tool. But when we use it as the default toilet and we teach the baby, I want you to pee and poop in the diaper anytime, anywhere, and I'm just going to ignore what you're telling me. We're teaching them to ignore their bodily urges. We're teaching them to stop listening to their body, to stop paying attention, that we're not going to pay attention, and that their voice is not to be heard. And I do think it's valuable to have them, but when we use them as the default, that's when we start to get into trouble. So keep your baby close, watch for the shift, and offer on the ins and the outs, and you will start to catch peas and poops almost immediately.
That is fascinating. So fascinating. I think you really beautifully lay out what it can look like with a newborn. Okay, you mentioned your baby's giving you this signal. If they have a diaper on, we're ignoring that. We're teaching them to ignore their body and their bodily cues and communication. In my brain, I naturally went to, oh my God, is that why so many of our people in our country are chronically constipated? Is this contributing to pelvic floor health when these toddlers grow up to be teenagers and young adults and then older adults? And we've never learned about our pelvic floor. And not only have we not learned about it, but we totally derailed it in the beginning of life, not letting it do its thing and also not properly supporting it in a way that it needs, in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny that you bring this up because I literally just posted a reel 2 days ago sharing a study that was done in 2021 on a group of about 10,000 children in China, in mainland China, which is a culture that has historically had very high rates of early elimination communication.
Okay.
And as disposable diapers have become more prevalent and available in China, more and more people have stopped this practice of elimination communication that is otherwise very common there. And a group of researchers did a study on this group of 10,000 children in kindergarten and primary school. So we're talking ages about 4 to 10. And they were looking at rates of bladder and bowel dysfunction, which were increasing in the country and are actually very prevalent worldwide. And they were looking at the correlation between early use of elimination communication and the rates of bladder and bowel dysfunction in later childhood. And the numbers were astounding. What they found was that for children who have the chance to practice EC anytime in the first 12 months of life versus children who never practice any form of EC, so most children in America who are in disposable diapers until they're old enough to talk to you about it, it was a 12 times rate of bladder and bowel dysfunction. Babies who do not start EC within the first 12 months of life are 12 times more likely to develop bladder and bowel dysfunction. And so what is that? It's an array of symptoms, but they can look like urinary incontinence, bowel incontinence, I forget what it's called, but basically not being able to pee on demand, not pooping on demand, chronic constipation. It was an array of things that all has to do with not being able to pee and poop on demand when you need to as a child. And it went on to say that obviously the impacts of this, not only is it very inconvenient for the child and the family and it's quite distressful, but it can also lead to emotional issues and shame and bullying later in childhood in school. And I actually thought back to my son, who is now 3, and we did not know about EC when my first child was born. And I actually didn't learn about it until he was 15 months old. And so I think back to all the times as a newborn where he was just crying and crying, and we would be holding him and we were trying to put him down, and he was just arching his back and wailing. And we were new parents. We didn't know. And we assumed it was colic or he was gassy because that's what everyone told us. Oh, he just has colic. And now, knowing what I know now and looking back, it's no. He was 3 weeks old and he was trying to tell us that he needed to poop. And he was telling us, please take my diaper off and take me to the potty. And we didn't know. We didn't know that was something we should be looking for. And when I think back to later when he was 2 and trying to teach him to poop in the potty and get potty train him, because he's a big boy. My partner and his dad he's a very large guy. And so my son was outgrowing the capacity of the 5T pull-up very early. I'm just going to put it that way for your listeners. And we were cleaning poop out of pajamas, bed sheets, underwear, pants, you name it, for months. And it was not contained in the pull-up anymore. And so we decided that we had to begin potty training him around the time my daughter was born, around when he was 2 years old. And I remember taking his diaper off and trying to encourage him to sit on the little potty that we had bought for him. And he was just crying and crying. And he said, Mama, put my diaper back on so that I can poop. He needed to poop. And because he had only ever pooped in a diaper, he was not comfortable experiencing the feeling of free pooping into something else. And it was so distressing for him to be asked to do something that he had never done before at that point. And he was begging me to put his diaper back on. And now, even as a 3-year-old, he's been potty trained for maybe a year now. And he's doing great, but he's still in diapers at night. We cannot get him to give up his pull-up. When we've tried to introduce underwear, I feel bad talking about him online, but well, I'm going to share this because I think it's really important for you to hear. And he is old enough that he can have a conversation with me about his pull-up and about the safety and security that his pull-ups give him at night. And he's tried underwear and he has an accident every single time. He can't even go a whole nap time without having an accident. And I think back how much I wish that we had known about EC when he was a baby, because I know that has a lot to do with it. And his inability to wean off of the diapers has everything to do with us not listening to his needs as a child, as a baby. And I think a lot of parents experience that. I get messages from mamas all the time who have older babies and are trying to potty train their older babies. And they're like, my child won't poop outside of a diaper. They're
Yeah.
terrified.
Yeah. I
And
think
it
that
makes
you
so much
nailed
sense.
it. I think you nailed it when it comes to we are sending their body messages and they are learning from day one. And whatever we program in them from birth, we either have to keep going with it or we have to unprogram it and then reprogram something different later down the road. And in a 3-year-old, I was in a 2 to 3-year-old classroom. I was in early childhood many years, so I did multiple ages. So my elimination communication experience obviously came from the infant classroom, but when I was in a 2 to 3-year-old classroom, potty training was part of the curriculum for that year. That was an age appropriate skill set that we wanted all of our kids in our class to have before they advanced on to the next class. And I have witnessed that emotional almost trauma, that emotional turmoil of and at 2 and 3, there's no shame inflicted on you from other kids in the class because they're still very egocentric at that point. They're all just paying attention to themselves, but that child who can't get it, they know. They understand regardless of how the adults in their life make them feel. You can continue to be very encouraging and never ever criticize them or make them feel as if they're in trouble and they still have this feeling of shame and guilt when they make an accident. I also have witnessed families not be as supportive and they do shame and almost bully their kids like, oh my God, again, can't you just poop in the
Mm-hmm.
potty like a regular kid? Or, oh my God, will we ever go a day that you don't pee in your pants? Come on. Or like, I'm going to stop sending underwear. So then you'll be forced to sit in your dirty underwear. And I understand that frustration as a parent, but also I think that you make such a good point of we've trained their body to do it this way. Their body's literally doing what we've trained. And now we are trying to teach their brain to do something different, but we are not giving their body any time to catch up with that.
Yeah. And yeah, I have witnessed the same thing of parents shaming their child because they had an accident. And it's so sad because ultimately we are the ones responsible for that. Like we are teaching our child from day one what we want them to do. We are modeling for them how we are modeling for them everything we want them to start doing as a human, whether that's how to eat, how to, when we go to sleep, how to interact with other people, how we want them to talk, language, how to go to the bathroom. And it's no different. And we are showing them what we want them to do. And so if we are programming them to ignore their body, that we're not going to listen to them and they shouldn't either when they're letting us know that they need to pee. Imagine if your 3-year-old said to you at bedtime, Mama, I need to go poop. And you said, too bad. It's bedtime. I'm not going to take you. Like, good luck. You would never do that. And I've been in this situation so many times where I'm just like, oh, I just want to go downstairs and be done. But when my son tells me, Mama, I need to poop at 10 o'clock at night, what do? I take him to the bathroom and we go hang out in the bathroom while he takes forever to poop. And it's the appropriate response because when a child lets you know they need to go to the bathroom, you take them. And a lot of people ask me all the time, Heather, what do you do? Do you do EC when you're out and about? Do you take them if you're grocery shopping? And if your child was 3 and they were potty training as you know it to be, and they let you know, hey, mom, I need to go potty, would you take them? You would take them because you want to encourage that communication and that recognition of their bodily urges and the ability to be like, oh, that feeling I'm feeling, that's me letting me know that I need to go pee. And of course, we want to reinforce that. Of course, we want to say, oh, great, like you recognize it. Let's go do something about it. Give them the opportunity on the potty and cheer them on when they get it. And so we are reinforcing and encouraging whatever we're choosing to do here. And so once you know about EC, I get it. It can feel overwhelming. It's a big
Of course.
commitment, especially
Yeah.
because like little babies pee just about every 15 minutes, it seems
Hmm.
like, when they are awake. And I am not saying by any means that you need to catch them all. You are not going to catch them all. It is just not possible. And you would literally be sitting in the bathroom all day. But we can give them many opportunities throughout the day, teach them that this is what I want you to do, and still use a diaper as a backup because a diaper is great for you and the baby. And it is again, it is a very important tool that we are lucky to have. But by giving them that opportunity repeatedly throughout the day, and when you do notice that they are obviously signaling to you, and at these times, the ins and outs before and after they're in something that would restrict their movement in any way, you are teaching them you're going to have opportunities to go. I'm going to listen to you and respond when you communicate to me. And I want you to keep doing that. And that's what they're going to learn. And versus the flip side, which is as a newborn, they're communicating these things to you as they are instinctually programmed to do. It is literally in their DNA and it is in yours to recognize that call and do something about it. We have collectively forgotten as a culture somehow this very important information, even though it's something that we as humans have done for millennia and still do in many cultures around the world, just not so much in modern westernized cultures. Um, they're signaling to you as a baby. And so we have the chance then, now that we know this information, to choose what we're going to do about it. And we can choose to keep doing business as usual and put them in a diaper and teach them that's where we want them to go. Or we can show them what we really want them to do. And when we start teaching them and encouraging that communication and reinforcing their recognition of those urges, and this is where I want you to go potty, by the time they're mobile, so by the time they are crawling, they're going to be able to take themselves to the potty. And by the time they are walking, they're going to be able to go on their own without any help from you whatsoever. And so when we start EC from birth, we are naturally potty training our babies because we are allowing their toilet independence to develop in line with their physical motor development, gross motor development, fine motor development. Can they crawl? Can they sit up? Can they walk? Can they pull their pants down? Can they wipe? And my daughter is 15 months and she has been taking herself to the potty since she could crawl. And she would recognize that she needed to go, crawl into the bathroom and go right up to her potty and pat it and look at me. And it was like she could not be more clear with what she wanted. And I would go in there and help her get her pants off and help her sit down. And now at 15 months, she's so close to walking, not quite, but she's like almost there. But she can crawl super fast. She can stand up and walk along something by holding on. And the other day, I was in my kitchen. I was busy with my son, and bless him, he used to have mama all to himself. And now there's a little sister that gets mama's attention. And I had helped her go to the potty because she had been signaling to me that she needed to go. But it didn't come out right away. And so she would get on and get off and get on and get off. And I was just like, okay, I just need to focus on my son for 2 seconds and help him complete the thing that we were doing together. And I just let her do her thing. And I looked down and she had left the kitchen and she had crawled over to the dining room, gone up some stairs and across the room. And she was sitting on her potty, pooping by herself.
Nice.
And I did nothing. I did not prompt her. I did not encourage her. I did not help her get her pants down. She just had no pants on whatsoever. She was naked from the waist down because she had attempted to go previously, but she just took herself. She knew what she needed to do. She knew how to get there. She knew how to stand up and walk over there. And she sat down and did her business entirely on her own. 15 months old. And I have people commenting on my Instagram all the time, just adamant. It's not possible. You are nuts, lady. Babies can't recognize their feelings. Babies can't hold it. They have no control. And it's just not true. It's just not true.
I think I wouldn't be such a believer if I hadn't seen it work a number of times. But like I say, I've helped through the years several families do this. Okay, I do have a question about pairing sounds or phrases, verbal phrases with the elimination, with the void. For example, I used to work with a family who did elimination communication, and every time we would hold the baby over the baby potty, we would make like a hissing sound like and she would do it. You would start hissing or making that sound and she would pee. It was fantastic. And so, do you recommend families do that? Are you familiar with families or practices that do that? If so, what's that about? And does it impact like success rate? Is there a reason to do it or any reason not to do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm so glad you brought that up. It is something that we do. I think it's really important. And to go into the communication aspect of this a little more, if we were to break down the steps from the moment you recognize that your baby is signaling to you to actually getting them to the potty and peeing or pooping, then there's several pieces of communication that should happen consistently along the way. So the first is you keep the baby close, then you recognize their signals. So whatever your baby's particular signals are, you're taking note of that. You say, oh, okay, my baby needs to go. Then you want to acknowledge them. So you want to let them know verbally and with a hand sign, ideally, if possible, that you've seen them, you hear them, and you're taking action. What we say is, oh, it's potty time. And we do the sign language P. This is P for toilet. It's universal. You can go anywhere in the world and say, yeah, I need to use the potty, and people will know what you're talking about. We taught our daughter, this is the potty sign. And so we said, oh, you need to go potty. And then we will take her to the potty. So she knows, okay, I've been heard. And now she can hold it because babies are born with sphincter control over their pee and poop releasing muscles, and they can hold it for a short amount of time. But you need to let them know, hey, I got you, we're going, because that gives them the chance to hold it for a minute or two. We're not talking a long time. This is not wait 15 minutes, but a minute or two, they can hold it. So you would say, oh, it's potty time. Take them to the potty. Take any clothing off that they have or their diaper if they're wearing a diaper. And again, you want to make this easy for yourself. Don't dress them in the outfits that are all convoluted and have zippers that zip from the top. Like, I don't know who invented that, but it just does not work for anybody with an actual baby. So I feel like it was invented by a man with no baby, but we'll never know. But anything that slows you down, like, it's just not worth it. So dress them in this clothing that's really easy to get in and out of because you will be getting in and out a lot, especially with a new baby. And you undress them, take their diaper off, and then either offer the potty, or you can hold them over a sink or a toilet or a bathtub or the ground. Many times at the park when my daughter was little, we would just hold her in a classic easy hold over the grass behind a tree, and that was fine. Or if you're at a restaurant and they need to go potty, you can just take them into the bathroom and hold them in a classic easy hold. I'll just describe it because I don't have any props with me, but you hold them under their thighs, and then you rest their back and their head against your chest. And then their head will rest on your chest and you just hold them in that under the thigh hold.
And they're
And then they
facing away
can
from you.
be,
It's as if they were sitting on the toilet.
yeah,
You basically are making your body in the toilet. Your hands are like the toilet
yes,
seat, and your chest and your like neck area is basically the back of the toilet for them to rest on, facing away
exactly.
from you.
Yeah. And if you have a very young baby who doesn't really have head support yet, you can also hold them in what's called a cradle hold. So you would have their head resting in the crook of your arm, and then you would almost hold them as if you're breastfeeding them. So they're like across your body. And then you just hold their legs sideways like this. And then you can aim how you need to aim. So that gives them a little bit more neck support if they are very little. So yeah, you would offer the potty, and then you want to make the cue noise, which is or you can say whatever you want to say that you can be consistent with. You want to make that noise while they're actually peeing, while the stream is coming out or while their poop is coming out. You don't have to have a different noise for pee versus poop because a lot of the time they will do both at the same time if they need to go. So you can just have one potty cue noise, that's fine, but you want to make it while you're seeing it happen so that they can associate the sound with the action. And then once they begin to associate it, then you can give them the noise and they will pee and poop on cue because they've associated
Crazy.
that noise. And you can also use other signals to help, other hand signals. We also use wait. So this is wait in sign language. And so, for example, I would use that if I was out walking outside near my house. We have a park very close to our home. And so we're often at the park. And sometimes my daughter will say, oh, like she'll start signaling to me that she needs to potty. And I'll say, okay, you need to go potty. Wait, I'm taking you home. Because we live in a northern climate. It's very cold in the winter. And while I could, and I have taken her diaper off and offered in cold weather, in the snow, I have done that in certain situations. But generally speaking, if we're 5 minutes from the house, I'm going to ask her to wait because it's going to be much more comfortable for her, much easier for everyone else if we can just get home and she can use her own potty in the comfort of our home. So I will ask her to wait and she can. And she started signing potty to me at 6 months. She started signing milk to me at 5 months. And she started using wait to sign that she needed to pee specifically shortly after that. So the way that she has communicated to me has evolved over time. Actually, let me just give you some examples of those signals because this might help you with your baby to recognize some of these signals. When she was a really little baby, so newborn, it was like the soft crying, the unlatching while breastfeeding, popping off the boob, just squirming generally when I was holding her. And then as she got older, some of her signals included like a certain sound she would make or looking at the potty, like this very sharp look. And she would use the specific sign that we gave her. But nowadays, she will pat her diaper when she needs, or pat her, she doesn't actually wear diapers during the day now, she's in underwear, but she will pat her crotch area when she needs to go. And that is a like really clear cue that she does need to go. Or we'll say, do you need to go potty? And she'll look. Or she'll crawl in there and pat it. Or nowadays she'll just go because she knows how to go herself. But when they are little and they do need your assistance, they're going to have this kind of array of different signals to you that all mean it's potty time. And as their brain development unfolds and they become more verbal, they become more mobile, they will evolve over time depending on their physical capabilities as they develop. Don't get too attached to any one signal and be like, oh, they're not doing the signal that they did a month ago because it's going to change. And you also, another thing that can really help, I do just want to add this one thing, is that because your baby is evolving over time very quickly, their patterns and routines are also going to change. And so what was common and routine for them as a newborn is be very different from what's common and routine at 6 months or 8 months or 12 months. And if you find that you're getting in a groove and you're like, okay, I know what's going on every day after the morning feed, they poop within 5 minutes, they poop after lunch, maybe they poop right after dinner, and you get into this routine and you may go months without changing a poopy diaper. We did. And there was a golden age of no poopy diapers from 4 to 8 months where we literally did not change a poopy diaper during that time. And then she started to grow up. She became mobile. Everything was exciting because now she could go get to it. And so with distractions came more accidents because she wasn't as tuned into herself and able to communicate that to us as quickly. And so she did have more accidents as she got a little bit older. She went through a phase around like 10 to 12 months where she had what I would call a potty regression. And I think it coincided with the development of her will and independence and like testing the boundary of I know what I'm supposed to do, but what happens if I don't do that? And so all of those things can happen, all of the signals will change, but when you're starting to notice their routines at a certain age, it can be really helpful to take note of those, record the data of like, when am I feeding them? When are they peeing and pooping? And how does that relate to naps and sleep? And you don't have to record data all the time. I know some people hate recording data. Some people love it. I love to keep data records of my children. I don't know why, but I have Huckleberry. It's a great app for recording all of those things because it has like a visual graph of everything that's happening. But even if you don't like to record data, it can be really helpful to just do it for a few days every month or so that you can keep tabs on what's changing. And if you find that you were catching almost everything and then all of a sudden you're not and you're missing a lot, it's because your baby is growing up. It's because they're
Yeah.
changing, their routines are changing, and you can go back to your data recording for a couple days just to start to see, oh, okay, where they used to be pooping every morning at this time, now that's happening later in the day or not at
Mm.
all. And because they're consolidating. And so using data to start to identify patterns will help you better be able to anticipate when to look for a pee or poop. And it's going to be easier for you to notice when they are signaling. Because I 100% understand, like, mama life is busy. There's a lot going on all the time. If you have older kids at home, maybe you have multiple toddlers in the house with you, maybe you work full time. There can just be a lot of things going on. And whatever you can do to make it easier for yourself to successfully notice and recognize your baby signals, I highly recommend that you do. So yeah,
Nice.
data can really help with that.
So for the person who is feeling overwhelmed with this but really wants to do it, I want to throw out like a hybrid scenario and you tell me your thoughts on it. So, when you're out and about and you're trying to do elimination communication, you could have on a disposable diaper while still honoring the times that you're supposed to be offering the potty. So, what this might look like is you go to Target, you get your baby out of the car seat. Instead of putting them directly in the carrier, you then stop at the trunk and offer them the potty, let them go to the bathroom, put them in the carrier, shop in Target, make sure that you're not going hours and hours, come back out to the car, offer the potty because you've taken them out of a carrier and want to put them into a car seat. Once they potty, then you put them into the car seat. And when you get home, you offer the potty again. All while you're out, they're wearing a disposable diaper just in case they do go in between the trips to the potty. Is that an appropriate hybrid approach to someone who is not ready to take the full leap of like, I'm leaving my baby naked or like, I'm going to put my 2-month old in underwear? But also, I do not want to ignore these signs. I want to be mindful of the pelvic floor and their body's communications. Am I on the right track there?
That's what we did. Yeah,
Nice.
we use diapers until we still use diapers at night and for sleeping. And we can get into sleep in a minute because that's a whole topic. But
Okay.
we did that. And again, the diaper is a backup. If you treat a diaper as a backup versus the default, it's you're already on the right track. And so by giving them all those opportunities, even if you miss, even if they pee while you're in Target, you can still say, if you start to recognize that they're signaling to you and you're shopping, you can say, oh, okay, it's potty time. I'm going to take you. And then take them to the bathroom if you can, or as soon as you are reasonably able to go and offer, do the acknowledgement, say, it's potty time, wait, we're going, and then offer as soon as you can. Even if you miss and they pee in their diaper, that's okay because you are still recognizing their signal, acknowledging them, and offering. So you really just want to focus on you're encouraging the communication and the recognition to continue. It's not about never soiling a diaper or going diaper free. I know that some people are really against diapers at all. I don't advocate for that because I think that like diapers are an important tool to help us be able to leave the house. And I just don't want anyone to feel like they can't leave the house and they can't live their life the way that they need to. And so use the diaper, put the diaper on. The fact that you are even doing this and trying to recognize their signals and acknowledging them and offering, like that is going to get you to where you want to go, which is encouraging your baby to recognize their urges and communicating that to you and being able to make this transition to potty training where you are passing the baton of responsibility to them much earlier than if you never did this at all.
Mm.
So what you described of when you would offer and using the diaper as a backup is totally an appropriate strategy for this. And it does sound like a lot when you say it like that. Oh, you'd be offering it all these times. But the reality is, you're probably going to be changing their diaper at all of those transitional moments anyway.
Way.
Because if you don't do EC with your baby and they just poop willy nilly, you could be in the middle of Target shopping and now they're pooping in the carrier you're obviously going to change them as soon as you can because you don't want them to sit in their own poop. You're going to be doing all of these changes anyway.
You might as well time
Align
them
them
to
with
be convenient with your
exactly,
own life, right? Make it
exactly,
convenient. And also, if you don't do it now at birth, you're doing it when they're 2 or 3. If you don't think that you don't get a child, a 2 or 3 year old, out of the car and go straight to the toilet in the Target before you even get your buggy, you're crazy. That is your first stop. And it is almost always your last
exactly.
stop. It's okay, we have to go potty because we have to drive home. You're already doing these potty stops. So you can choose to do it in 2 or 3 years, or you can do it now. Or, like you say, you can risk having to leave your buggy outside with all of your stuff and go put your baby on that nasty tray that you have to lay them down on to change their diaper in the women's bathroom. So, yeah,
Yes.
yuck. Okay, so you mentioned sleep. It sounds like we're primarily doing this during daytime awake hours. What about overnight sleep?
Okay. This is like the all important question. And there are so many ways to do this.
Okay.
I don't think there's a wrong way or a right way to do this. I'm going to share what I do and what I recommend as like a framework to think about EC overnight. So our babies sleep through the night and both of them slept through the night. Like we're talking like 9 to 11 hours at 3 months old. And they have continued to do that their whole life, which I'm very grateful for. I know that is not the case with all babies. So if you have a 1 year old and you're still waking up multiple times a night, like, bless you. It is hard. So we're very grateful. Our babies do sleep through the night, and both of them slept in their own crib. My son started earlier than my daughter. We moved our daughter when she was 3 months old into her own crib before she was sleeping in a bassinet beside our bed and then would co-sleep with us for the second half of the night after she would wake up because we would put her to bed in her bassinet. She would wake up. Maybe I would do a dream feed around midnight before I would go to bed, and then she would wake up around 3 or 4, and then I would breastfeed her, offer the top hat potty while I was breastfeeding her. She would usually poop at that 4 to 5 a.m. feeding. Then I would put one clean diaper back on her, put her in the bed with me, and then she would sleep with us for the rest of the night until she woke up in the morning. And then we would either feed her again and she would go back to sleep, or I would feed her again, like trying to like side feed her so I can still sleep. And sometimes she wouldn't go back to sleep and she would sit up and she was wide awake. And what I realized is that when your baby won't go back to sleep the way that you expect them to go back to sleep, when they should be sleepy, you fed them, you changed them, like everything is good, but they're not going to sleep. A lot of the time, it's because they need your poop. And it's not always the case, but it's something that you should think about checking or offering as you're like working your way down your list of, okay, like I fed them, I changed them, they're warm and comfortable, I held them, I sang the song. Like part of your sleep routine with your baby should include offering the potty so that they can relieve themselves and be comfortable going to sleep. Because let me ask you this, do you go to sleep without going to pee first before you go to bed? I think
No,
not.
never.
You're not
Yeah.
going to be able to go to sleep if you're feeling that agitation. So offer the potty before bed as part of the bedtime routine. And then when your baby wakes up during the night, if you are breastfeeding them throughout the night, that is a great time to offer the potty. Right after they wake up from the sleep, they're very little, give them the top hat potty so that they can do their business while you're feeding them, because otherwise they will probably poop at least once, if not 3 times in their diaper while you're feeding them. And that's just, you don't want to be changing their diapers 3 times in the middle of the night. So it's actually, I think, easier to incorporate EC and a potty offering opportunity with that so that they're like on the same timing as you are. And the way I think about it is if your baby is signaling consciously and intentionally, I would always recommend offering the potty so that you're being consistent with the way that you are acknowledging them and offering. Because if during the day they communicate to you and you acknowledge and you offer, and then during the night they communicate and you ignore them, it's confusing. So if they're being intentional about it and letting you know with their signals, I would recommend offering. But if they are just waking up at the top of a sleep cycle, fussing around for a few seconds, and then going right back to sleep, and they're not really fully becoming awake, I would just let them sleep. I am not a fan of waking sleeping babies for any reason, even to go pee. So that's where, again, where I think having the diaper is a great tool because
Yeah.
it can allow your baby to sleep. And for me, I think sleep makes me a better mom. It makes my babies happy babies. And as long as it doesn't interfere with sleep, I just let them keep going. Now, if they wake up in the middle of the night and they're crying and they won't go back to sleep, then yeah, I would recommend that you get up and offer the potty and do your normal routine to get them back to sleep.
Yeah.
So if you're co-sleeping, it's actually the people I know who get their babies out of diapers at night really early are almost always co-sleeping with their baby in some way. A mom messaged me and she told me that she has multiple children and many children, and they all live in a small house, and the children actually co-sleep together. And that her daughter was able to get up out of bed, I think at like, she wasn't even 18 months old, but she was able to get out of the bed by herself, go to the potty, take her diaper off, and go pee in the middle of the night, and
Wow.
then get back in the bed with the other children. And when we, A, give our babies independence and the opportunity to self-serve in that way, they can physically get out of bed and physically go to the potty, they're going to be much more capable of doing that at a younger age. And if they're really little and they're not mobile yet, then again, keeping your baby close is going to help you be able to recognize their signals when they need to go and give you the chance to help them. If they're sleeping in their own room, in a crib, behind a closed door, I would definitely recommend putting them in a diaper because you're not going to be able to get to them as quickly. But if you are co-sleeping and you want to take this all the way, then you could not have them in a diaper at night because every time they wake up at the top of that sleep cycle, you're going to know and be able to offer. But if you don't want to wake up multiple times during the night, it's something to consider. It's choose your own adventure with EC overnight. You get to decide like how involved you want to be. Are you still breastfeeding at night? If you're trying to side nurse them and get them to go back to sleep and they're not settling, again, like that's a really strong indicator that they need to pee or poop or both. And you might need to get up
Message
and take
them.
care of that.
Yeah. Okay, we keep
Yeah.
talking about doing this as a newborn. How early are we actually implementing this? You mentioned starting it when your daughter was 5 weeks old. Was that intentional? Was she just 5 weeks old when you learned about it? Do we start it literally from day one? Are we taking that top hat potty, which, by the way, I've linked in the show notes for everybody, to the hospital with us? Is this something that we're doing once we get the hang of breastfeeding and we're back up to birth weight and we don't have as many like goals and milestones on our plate? When are we implementing these things in elimination communication?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And it is, I talk about this in my guide, but the best time to introduce EC and to begin this with your baby is between 0 and 8 weeks. And that period of time is between birth and the first week or the second week. If you're familiar with the Wonder Week and the 10 weeks that a baby goes through in their first years of development, there's a critical developmental leap that happens around 8 weeks of age where they suddenly become aware of their physical body and the difference between their body and the outside world. And it's at that point where they can start to feel that urge in their body and the feeling of peeing or pooping and letting it go. And if we can introduce EC before that point in time, then they're like never going to know anything else. Like they're never going to know the difference of, oh, I was in a diaper and now I'm not in a diaper. And this is confusing. And why are they doing this now, but we weren't doing this before? So if you can start in that first 0 to 8 weeks, then you're still in that window of brain development where they still think they're one with you. There's not as much awareness of the things that are physically happening to their body. And the instinct that they have to let you know is, I think it's an instinct similar to like the rooting instinct where they can actually find the nipple on the mom as a newborn. They can recognize the mother's smell. They know if they're close to you or not close to you. It's part of their suite of instincts that are part of their survival mechanisms. It's what they're programmed with. It keeps them safe, it keeps them healthy. So, yes, they are signaling to you as a newborn, but they don't have that physical body awareness yet until after 8 weeks. So, any time during that period is a great time to start EC. And I actually just did a story about this today, but it can be so overwhelming when your baby is first born, especially if you're a first time mom, because you just had a baby. Like you just gave birth to a human. And maybe you also just had major surgery. I did. I had 2 emergency C-sections with my children. And you need to prioritize your own health and rest and recovery first, and then worry about EC when you feel ready. So don't feel like you have to start day one in the hospital and have your potty with you. If you want to do that, and I know a lot of people do, that's awesome. Go for it. But don't feel like you have to. Your baby is not going to suffer if you don't. And I think it's more important that you prioritize your own rest and healing first. And especially get the breastfeeding relationship established. Get your milk in, because breastfeeding is, especially if it's your first time, that's a whole thing that you have to learn from scratch. And maybe no one has ever showed you how to do that. And you're figuring it out on the fly. So definitely prioritize, you and breastfeeding and healing first. And don't feel like you have to jump into EC until you're ready. My daughter was in the NICU for a week after birth, and that's a whole other story that we won't go into here, but I didn't even get to hold her until she was 5 days old. And so when we finally got her home, like we were trying to make sure that she was okay, and I was recovering from a C-section, and I was actually reading the book Go Diaper Free by Andrea Olson.
I
At the
love that
time
book.
yeah, you know it. Yeah, so it's great. It's full of a lot of fantastic information. I had first heard about EC on a podcast when my son was about maybe 15 months old. And so I ordered the book. I started reading it and I was like, oh, this is so cool. And in the book, it says that you can start like 0 to 18 months. And so I tried to start EC with my son then, but it just wasn't working. Like at that point, he was 15 months in to me telling him, I want you to pee and poop in a diaper, and I'm not going to pay attention to your signals. And so when I introduced the potty, he wanted nothing to do with it. And I tried all the things that the book recommended, and he wasn't having it. And so I didn't want to force it. So we just put it away and didn't try again until he was 2 and we started potty training for real. But I do think that 0 to 12 months is still very easy to start EC with your baby. It is obviously going to be harder with a mobile baby. And if you're hearing this for the first time, and this is the first time you've ever heard about EC, and your baby is 7 months old, don't stress, don't worry. You are not too late to start. Yes, it is going to be the easiest to start in 0 to 8 weeks, and I'm all about making this easy for you. But you can still do this with an older baby, any baby up to 12 months. And sometimes beyond that, it really depends on the personality of the baby. You can still introduce the potty and begin to recognize their signals and offer the potty. And I know a woman that I coached a few weeks ago at one of my live workshops. She started with an 11-month-old baby, and her baby was pooping in the potty within a week after the workshop. It is still doable with an older baby, and you're just going to have to take a different approach with it. And there are strategies that you can use to get an older baby to sit on the potty, especially a mobile baby, because they are very busy at that age, and they're just not going to be interested in sitting there with you unless you make it very engaging and exciting for them. So you can do things like have special toys that you only offer at the potty, or books with you. Just the face-to-face time with you can be enough, honestly, because every baby just wants more time with you, like more face-to-face, one-on-one time with you. And if you can sit there with them and truly engage with them, sing songs with them, the Itsy Bitsy Spider is a great one. It's very engaging. Anything with like hand signals and a lot of eye contact, they're going to be so happy with that. And so use their potty time as quality time and time that they're getting to spend with you and connect with you. And that's going to help them want to sit there. And you can also bring stuffed animals to the potty and start to pretend. You can put the bear on the potty and then they're going to the potty, make it social. There's all kinds of things you can do with an older baby to make potty time more engaging when they've never done it before. So it's really just getting them to sit there the first time and getting them to pee and poop the first time is the hardest part, because once they go that first time and you use your cue, so it's when you see them pee, you say the sound and then celebrate, go nuts, clap, sing, get excited, whatever you do with your baby. Let them know that you're excited that they did it, positively reinforce that action, and then keep doing that. And every time you offer after that and they do it, it's going to get easier and easier, because now you're reinforcing what you want them to do and they're going to do more of that. It's really just getting them to sit there the first time. And then after that, once you get that first poop in the potty, that's a pretty cool moment, because
The
you're going to
connection has
realize,
been, yeah, their brain
yes,
realizes,
yes,
oh, wow, I can do this. Okay, hearing you talk about the
yeah.
contrast between your daughter and son reminds me of the differences. Maybe some people would call them discrepancies. I don't, just differences, developmental differences between boys and girls when it comes to potty training. We know girls typically potty train a little bit earlier, and on average, they don't need as long to learn how to potty train. So boys are potty training later and they need a little bit longer. Do we see any sort of statistical difference in terms of boys and girls when it comes to EC? And this could be success rate or how fast it takes for children to get it, or better times to introduce it depending on developmental age, anything like that?
That's a great question. And I actually don't know of any research that has been done on that. I'm gonna look into that, because now that you're bringing it up, I think that would be really great information to be able to share. But what I do know is that I know of many anecdotal stories of both boys and girls successfully beginning EC very young. Really, the only difference between a little boy and a little girl is that you have to aim the penis. If you are offering them, like, if it's a putty that they sit on that has the little like pee guard in the front, the splash guard,
Yep.
it's not really a big deal. Like, usually that will catch anything that would go out. But if you are holding them over a sink, you may need to like use your hands, like aim down into the sink so that you're not peeing on the mirror. And same if you're holding them, technicalities, same if you're holding them over a toilet, you may need to aim a little bit. And then if you are using a top hat putty with a little boy, it, it's not going to necessarily just fall straight into the putty. So you may want to put a cloth over top of them, or like a pre-full diaper or a burp cloth, something that will keep
Catch it.
the pee from going out, because you just need to make it go in the putty. But yeah, that's really just a physiological difference, and you can get used to the functionality of doing what you need to do there. And otherwise, I know plenty of little boys that have been absolutely fine with EC. There's there hasn't been a lot of research done on EC in the US that I know of, because it's just really uncommon here. But I'm gonna look into that and see if I can find out.
If you find anything
I
cool, let
think
me know.
I
Send it
think what I've
along.
found so far, yeah, I will share that.
Cool. All right, Heather, this has been so insightful. Thank you so much for joining me today. Not only did it allow me to like reminisce on my early childhood days and remember all the sweet families that introduced me to this idea, and I've helped their families go through this potty training journey at different stages and with different approaches. I think potty training is something that when you have a baby, you don't always think about, but today's perspective was so incredibly cool to think about. There are other options. We don't have to wait until our children are 2 or 3 or 4 to potty train. It may be something that we could do arguably with a lot less resistance if we start it from birth, if you find that is for you. So, Heather, I know you've mentioned your free guide and we will link that. But otherwise, if people are interested in connecting with you or learning from you, how can they do that and where can they find you?
Yeah, thanks so much. So I'm on Instagram at readyfrombirth.ec. I post over there daily. And then I also have a YouTube channel that is Ready from Birth. I found that a lot of people really like hearing me talk about EC over there on YouTube. I have a whole playlist of videos on EC that will take you through everything from starting with a newborn to a day in the life to how we do EC overnight, and even doing EC if your child is in daycare. So there's a lot of free resources out there related to this. And I also have a community, the Ready from Birth community, where you can connect with other mamas doing EC and get biweekly live coaching with me. We meet every other Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern time, and all of those are recorded as a resource. So that's a great place to come and get your questions answered and get ongoing support as your baby goes through this journey, as well as just to connect with other mamas doing this, because it can be so hard and isolating sometimes when you're trying to figure out, is this thing normal that's happening? What do I do in this situation? And almost none of your friends or family are doing this. And there's not really anyone to turn to get the information that you need. That's why I created the community, and I'd love to see you over there.
Heck yeah. All right, you guys. Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope you have enjoyed this conversation. I know that I have, and it was such a nice refresher on what elimination communication is, what infant potty training can look like, how you can make it fit into your life to fit the goals that you have for your families. I think sometimes when we hear of new things or new approaches, they can feel overwhelming and, oh my God, another thing, or oh my God, now it's another decision. But instead of being overwhelmed by it, I want you to feel like, wow, I actually have the freedom to choose whatever feels good to me and my family. I'm not locked into one thing just because that's all I know, or just because that's how society typically does it, or society says that it has to be done. So, anywho, now I'm on a rant. You guys know that is the whole point of my entire platform. So, Heather, thank you for being here with us today. Listeners, thank you for being here with us today. Connect with Heather on social media. You can find me at Tranquility by Hee on any socials. And as always, check out the Birth Lounge. It's a membership for expecting and new parents to prepare for an informed and confident hospital birth so that you can avoid birth trauma and have a birth that you love and deserve. All right, you guys, I will see you next time in the next episode. Until then, bye. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you next time on the Birth Lounge podcast. Until then, head over to Instagram and find us at Tranquility by Hee and give us a follow. You can also check us out at thebirthlounge.com.